Today's anomaly is one of the more famous early internet legends, the story of a so-called time traveler from 2036 named John Titor. Posting at a time when online communities were far more specialized, John Titor captured the imaginations of readers with his stories of a much different future than one might expect, a future scarred by the folly of man, yet not totally unrecognizable to contemporary readers. Though the John Titor story is all but confirmed to have been an elaborate hoax, the question of who penned these original posts, and why, is still unanswered. The best place to start with unpacking this story is the year 1998, when talk radio reigned supreme and discourse surrounding conspiracies was at an all-time high. The show Coast to Coast AM became one of the most popular paranormal talk radio programs just 10 years after its debut in the late 1980s. Hosted by the late Art Bell, it carved a niche with its slew of unconventional guests like physicist Bob Lazar and the clairvoyant Sylvia Browne, the latter of whom has been covered in a previous anomaly. Sometimes Art would solicit stories of interest from his audience, who could call or fax into the show to offer their perspective. One night in late July 1998, Art had received a most unusual message from a listener who had been following other reports of time travel on the program, and wanted to set the record straight.
Dear Art, I had to fax when I heard other time travelers calling in from any time past the year 2500 AD. Please let me explain. Time travel was invented in 2034. Offshoots of certain successful fusion reactor research allowed scientists at CERN to produce the world's first contained singularity engine. The basic design involves rotating singularities inside a magnetic field. By altering the speed and direction of rotation, you can travel both forward and backward in time. Time itself can be understood in terms of connected lines. When you go back in time, you travel on your original timeline. When you turn the singularity engine off, a new timeline is created due to the fact that you and your time machine are now there. In other words, a new universe is created. To get back to your original line, you must travel a split second farther back and immediately throw the engine into forward without turning it off. Some interesting outcomes of this are: 1. You meet yourself. I have done it often, even taken a younger version of myself along for a few rides before returning myself to the new timeline and going back to mine. 2. You can alter history in the new universe that you have just created. Most of the time, the changes are subtle. Sometimes I'll notice car models that don't exist or books that come out late. The oldest one was a skyscraper that wasn't built in a near-favorite store of mine in New York. Interestingly, when you travel in time, you must compensate for the orbit of the Earth. Since the time machine doesn't move, you have to adjust the engine so you remain on the planet when you turn it off. Unfortunately, it was also discovered that anyone going forward in time from my 2036 hit a brick wall in the year 2564. Everyone who has ever been there has reported that nothing exists. When the machine is turned off, you find yourself surrounded by blackness and silence. Now, most time travelers are trying to find out where the line went bad by going into the past, creating a new universe, and proceeding forward to see if the same thing results in 2564. It appears the line went bad around the year 2000. I'm here now, in this time, to test a few theories of mine before going forward.
The facts went on to suggest that the Y2K bug was an imminent threat that could lead to a total breakdown of society and the institution of martial law, which the traveler hoped to prevent. Aside from a follow-up fax a short while later, this seems to have been a one-off occurrence that ordinarily would have been relegated to the dustbins of history. Just 2 years later, though, a message on a little-known internet forum bore such a striking resemblance to the facts from Coast to Coast AM that many began wondering if this so-called time traveler had returned. From here, the story only grew more complicated. The Time Travel Institute website first came online in the late 1990s. Its features included a catalog of time travel and pop culture, a list of theories and other similar websites, and of course, a bulletin board service where users came together to discuss their favorite topic. Though the website labeled itself fiction, there were several members convinced of its veracity lurking on the web forum. Topics ranged from the concept of linear time to the weaponization of time itself. One thread was started by a member known simply as Paul on October 23, 2000, wherein he sought answers on how time travel paradoxes worked. Concepts like the multiverse theory, where an infinite number of timelines could potentially coexist, were proposed as possibilities that averted the grandfather paradox. The discussion was about as scientifically rooted as such a topic could get, with users debating each other in good faith to make the best sense of the subject they could. On November 2nd, however, this thread was derailed by an unregistered user called Time Travel Zero, who was about to take it in a far more colorful direction. Time Travel Zero commended his fellow users for knowing about the theories of mathematicians Roy Kerr and Frank Tipler, both of whom contributed to theoretical physics. Approaching the topic with an air of certainty, the user asserted time travel experiments would begin at CERN as early as 2001, running for another 33 years until General Electric created the first prototype of a time machine. He stopped short of posting pictures to back up his claim, blaming this on the limitations of the message board. When another user named Pamela presented an alternative, Time Travel Zero remained leery of the need to register using his personal information. To get around that, Pamela had Time Travel Zero email her the pictures for posting, and although they've appeared elsewhere online since, the original link has curiously been excluded from the Internet Archive. Pamela then posted a series of questions for Time Travel Zero about his experiences and how time travel worked, which he was all too happy to answer. Quote,
"The unit has a ramp-up time after the destination coordinates are fed into the computers. An audible alarm and a small light start a short countdown, at which point you should be secured in a seat. The gravity field generated by the unit overtakes you very quickly. You feel a tug toward the unit similar to rising quickly in an elevator, and it continues to rise based on the power setting the unit is working under. At 100% power, the constant pull of gravity can be as high as 2 Gs or more, depending on how close you are to the unit. There are no serious side effects, but I try to avoid eating before a flight. No bright flash of light is seen. Outside, the vehicle appears to accelerate as the light is bent around it. We have to wear sunglasses or close our eyes, as this happens due to a short burst of ultraviolet radiation. Personally, I think it looks like you're driving under a rainbow."
Time Travel Zero was then asked what the year 2036 was like, along with the decades preceding it. Quote,
"The year 2008 was a general date by which time everyone will realize the world they thought they were living in was over. The Civil War in the United States will start in 2004. I would describe it as having a Waco-type event every month that steadily gets worse. The conflict will consume everyone in the US by 2012 and will end in 2015 with a very short World War III.
This war supposedly killed up to 3 billion people, while strengthening the will of those who survived. Quote,
Life is centered around the family and then the community. I cannot imagine living even a few hundred miles away from my parents. There is no large industrial complex creating masses of useless food and recreational items. Food and livestock is grown and sold locally. People spend much more time reading and talking together face to face. Religion is taken seriously, and everyone can multiply and divide in the heads."
Time Travel Zero was reluctant to share any blueprints of his device, stating it simply wouldn't make sense to the people of the early millennium. Reiterating the multiverse theory, the traveler was adamant that universe-ending paradoxes weren't going to happen even if he met his past self, which he had supposedly done on a few occasions. He also explained his device was first installed in a 1967 Chevrolet vehicle, along with a description of its limitations. Quote,
"The farther away from the center of the cone, the more differences you will see in the world line. The CTO4 begins to break away at about 60 years. This means the level of confidence drops rapidly after 60 years of travel, and the world line divergence increases. In other words, if I wanted to go back 2,000 years and meet Christ, there is a better than average chance I would end up on a world line where he was never born.
Some users expressed a mixture of skepticism and fascination, though Time Travel Zero admitted that his goal wasn't to be believed. He chastised those who asked if he could game the stock market, noting how typical such a comment was for people of the year 2000. The discussion continued to dive into the state of the environment and the logic behind time travel, which apparently involved the manipulation of gravity. To support this, he employed a mixture of contemporary physics papers and obscure GeoCities websites. Some asked if time travel had any adverse effects on the human body, to which the time traveler replied that he felt nothing aside from more susceptibility to the common cold. Users continued to jump in on the discussion, asking about what daily life was like and about the time traveler's backstory. He was apparently born in 1998, with America spiraling into civil conflict around 2005, leading him to become a soldier at the tender age of 13. By 2015, Russia had supposedly launched an assault on this embattled version of America, leading to all-out world war. Major cities worldwide were pulverized, and the aptly named American Federal Empire was brought down around the same time. Following this, the American capital became Omaha, Nebraska, and local communities became charged with picking up the pieces of the conflict. The US Constitution was supposedly rewritten, reflecting the changes brought on by the conflict. Time Travel Zero was asked point blank what the purpose of time travel was, replying that it was primarily used to restore the environment to how it was before the Great War. His mission was acquiring an IBM 5100 computer from 1975 to solve issues in older computers related to the year 2038 problem. When questioned about what he was doing on an early 2000s internet board, he simply replied that he was there for personal reasons and to warn Americans of the impending civil war he believed would irreparably scar the nation. Time Travel Zero also tried alerting members of an imminent outbreak of the mad cow disease, which did in fact hit America around 2003. His other predictions included China putting a man on the moon, and the shaky science behind the Hawking radiation theory. Both of these did in fact come true, though given how many more of his predictions didn't, these were simply chalked up to educated guesses. Users continued to probe Time Travel Zero for the next few months, especially on the topic of paradoxes and the specifics of his mission. His answers became more sporadic from here. This hardly slaked the curiosity of more skeptical members, though, who continued badgering him about specifics. Time Travel Zero took this in stride. Eventually, the discussion seems to have reached an upper limit of posts, before continuing in a new thread. On January 26, 2001, Time Travel Zero was seen posting on the Art Bell web forum, referring to himself by the name he would later best be known by, John Titor. He reiterated his quest for the IBM 5100 computer, and like the Time Travel Institute BBS thread, he quoted inquiries about his experiences. Some of his past writings were being picked up by the Paranormal News Network website, including personal details like his Christian agnostic faith and a love of sailing. Interestingly, despite the near collapse of society John described, the internet played a major role in the future, for the purposes of telephony and more. John also stated there were at least 7 other time travelers working in the same unit as him. When some members questioned the truthfulness of his claims, he brushed it off by saying that even in 2036 there were people who didn't believe in time travel, likening them to flat earthers of the present day. Commenting on the perceived outdated quality of future tech, John told readers that this problem was one of distribution following the Third World War. This gave him the chance to elaborate on the importance of the particular IBM model he was seeking. Quote,
"The 5100 had a very simple and unique feature that IBM did not account for and decided it was not in their best interest to advertise, which in hindsight was not very smart. This accidental feature was thus removed from any future desktop computers. In order to take advantage of this feature, the 5100 I have now required a couple of special tweaks that had to be done by one of those software engineers in 1975. Anybody who is familiar with this feature and was told to keep their mouth shut about it will be able to tell you what it is."
Later, a man claiming to be a former IBM employee named Bob Dubkey would confirm there were in fact such features on the old 5100 models, which if true meant that the person writing the John Titor posts at least had extensive knowledge of computer engineering. As for the time travel machine itself, John Titor described it as an awkward and rather bulky device, and at one point even provided technical diagrams. Observers have noted that although these are difficult to make heads or tails of, they had to have been designed by someone who knew their way around engineering electronics. By contrast, one astute reader pointed out there was nothing resembling futuristic slang in Time Travel Zero's posts, despite his claim of being from 3.5 decades in the future. On March 10, 2001, John Titor announced he was preparing for a return trip to 2036, with stopovers in 1998 and 1975 beforehand. He offered to take messages from forum members back to their past selves in 1998, noting that while it wouldn't change the present timeline, it would ensure that a version of interested members would gain foreknowledge of what they could expect in the future. After taking credit for helping the world avoid the Y2K catastrophe, he bid his fellow forum members farewell. Pamela continued to act as a throughway for John, eventually informing everyone that he had begun his voyage home on April 3, 2001. This effectively put the story to rest, at least for several years, until John Titor became the unexpected focus of a 2005 article in Hustler magazine. As John Titor became more widely known, a website dedicated to collating information given by the so-called time traveler was established. The Hustler article included an interview with the page's webmaster, Oliver Williams, who insisted he was simply a curious onlooker who also wanted answers. Oliver claimed to be unsure if it was a well-crafted con or if there was indeed a kernel of truth to John Titor's story. More interestingly, this interview introduced a new individual that would become a staple of all future John Titor lore, an entertainment lawyer named Lawrence H. Haber. He was rumored to represent the Titor family, but wouldn't confirm it, only revealing that he indeed had a client involved in the case. Because Mr. Haber had previously worked as an entertainment lawyer for Disney, some began speculating over whether he was in fact the architect of the John Titor story. A book was published called John Titor, A Time Traveler's Tale, distributed by the aptly named John Titor Foundation. Curiously, this organization holds the same address as Mr. Haber, leading to intense speculation over his degree of involvement. The book now sells for well over $800 used, making it quite rare. As for Oliver Williams, he went on to become a frequent guest on the radio and podcast circuit through the mid-2000s, including numerous appearances on Coast to Coast AM where he recounted the John Titor story and provided updates as they came. Among those who had become fascinated with the John Titor story was a man named Marlon Pullman, who claimed to have a background in physics. Marlon sought a patent for the time travel device in 2004, with the intent of eventually building his own. Not long after, though, Marlon faced several assault charges ranging from kidnapping to drugging women with homemade LSD, and was held on a $2 million bail. These grisly acts put the kibosh on any plans Marlon may have had. Even as the years ticked by, an incredible amount of interest in the John Titor story was still found on niche internet circles concerning paranormal claims. Some took it upon themselves to get to the bottom of the story and discover who in fact John Titor was. The Italian documentary series Voyager reported in 2008 that it was a private investigator named Mike Lynch who managed to find the P.O. Box of the John Titor Foundation. It was located nowhere else but Florida, where Larry Haber also called home. Supposedly, this P.O. Box belonged to a John R. Haber, though Larry countered that he didn't have a brother named John. The following year, John Hughston of the blog Hoax Hunter started putting together a dossier to determine who exactly was behind the John Titor story, taking into account the many stories and the various names that had some connection to him. Drawing on a list of 88 potential identities, Hughston speculated that many of these were accounts made on the Time Travel Institute forums with the purpose of asking himself questions to draw attention to the claims. Hughston compared the writing styles of the users, noting that while they weren't always consistent, this didn't preclude an elaborate roleplay. Hughston then followed up with several of the most prominent names attached to John Titor, including Pamela, the woman who had frequently been in touch with the person behind the time travel story. It seems at some point Pamela received a letter from John Titor containing a futuristic IBM patch, which convinced her that he was in fact real. What's more is that John Titor promised to send her a video before the voyage home to his original timeline, as well as a song that only she would know about. This was to serve as John Titor's calling card for future communications. Hughston, however, fell short of labeling her as a suspect, instead classifying her as a true believer that was duped by whoever invented John Titor's story. He managed to get a rare interview with her later on in his investigation, where she divulged some previously unknown details. Amongst other things, Pamela confirmed that the letter sent to her was from Florida, a detail that helped solidify suspicions and establish a lead. Larry Haber continued to be a primary suspect, especially as a most interesting personal connection to the John Titor story came to light. It turned out that Larry had a brother named John Rick Haber, at first said to be a computer scientist throughout his professional career. If so, the idea that he would have intimate knowledge of the IBM 5100 computer John Titor was so concerned with finding wouldn't be out of the question. It might also explain the detailed technical schematics posted at the height of John Titor's writings, which once gave an air of authenticity to his claims. Further complicating this is the existence of yet another Haber brother, Maury, who also seems to be an expert in computers and internet security. While Larry has denied direct involvement in creating the John Titor story, the many correspondences with the members of the Haber family that John Hughston has shared online reveal several inconsistencies. Here now is John Hughston to talk about the Habers and how he believes they're involved with John Titor.
Well, John Titor, from my perspective, is a fictional character created by Maury Haber, and Maury Haber was nothing but a forum troll, but a harmless forum troll. He just playing along. I'm a time traveler from the year 2036. And it spiraled out of control. It became the #1 most popular post on Art Bell's old forum, Post to Post AM. He posted from Florida. We all know that because the IP addresses were visible on the original forum. Maury Haber, not a single human being on planet Earth, having just been an outside party looking at the John Titor story, had ever heard of Maury Haber. But Maury Haber kept a low profile. Nobody knew he existed. I did a couple searches on Larry Haber. I saw the P.O. box on an addresses website, kind of like a Yellow Pages, White Pages type website. It was there. It said John Titor. It said, I believe, John R. Haber. And I had already heard about this Richard Haber, brother of Larry Haber. I never suspected Richard Haber, not a single time, because Richard tagged along with his brother, Larry, during an Italian TV show. I found Maury Haber's existence, independent from Mike Lynch, because Mike Lynch never knew Maury existed. During Mike Lynch's entire investigation, he mentioned Maury Haber's name exactly 0 times. So not only did I prove with a text-based linguistic comparative study, I looked at Maury Haber's texts. How did I find Maury Haber? For 3 years after John Titor stopped posting entirely, it's the first time I heard about him. I searched time travel stuff, and it was actually a trend during the early 2000s. A lot of people claiming to be time travelers. And that's where I found, hey, who's the John Titor guy? Researched, read all of his posts. I laughed. I thought they were pretty hilarious. And I laughed at the reactions to the people saying they wholeheartedly believe in him. And I was like, what? What's going on? I saw the early stages of some type of a religious cult, is what it looked like, from the Time Travel Institute forum, the Anomalies forum. A lot of people looked up to John Titor. He was their hero. And sure, anyone could be your hero. Superman, Batman, a fictional character. That's pretty common these days, but I said on a couple forums, I bet I can find this guy's identity. I bet I can find his identity. And every time I said that, dozens of people would say, yeah, right. People have been looking for years, dude. You got no chance. I wouldn't even be surprised if one of the Habers secretly commented that. And I have a theory that one of the John Titor experts gave out false information was always secretly one of the Habers. That's just one of the tiny theories I can't prove. On Twitter, I've been bothered by many a John Titor fanboy, extreme cult believer member, if you will, someone that just goes off to the extreme a little bit, and they just fantasize and love John Titor. He's their hero. They almost worship him. I wanted to put stuff like that to an end. I saw the early stages of that in 2004 when I first saw the reaction of the current fans in 2004. I was determined alone by wanting to give some of these fanatical people's lives back by showing, hey, this guy's not a real time traveler. It's just entertainment, right? The more people said you can't find him, the more I wanted to find him. So that was a bit of a motivating driving factor. But how did I finally find Maury Haber's existence? Just 1,000 hours of Google searching. If you never give up, and there's a chance, you'll find a troll will slip up, and Maury Haber slipped up. He was so concerned with anonymity. His avatar was like a yellow sign with a silhouette of a hacker hacking. Like his main avatar of his face, he was so concerned for his face being out there that he put that. And that, after discovering his existence from 1,000 hours of searching and seeing that internet hacker as his avatar, I knew he was concerned of his identity being revealed, just period. And so I searched Maury Haber. Who's this Maury Haber guy? I found, and let's face it, during the avatar discovery, I already knew at the same time it was the brother of Larry Haber. A lot of people are confused. Who's Larry Haber? Who's Richard Haber? What's going on? So there's 4 Haber brothers in total, 4 brothers. The other 3 are not particularly internet famous, other than by association to Larry. We only discovered the existence of Richard Haber because he tagged along during the Italian TV show. He tagged along and followed Larry the whole time. Mike Lynch is like, who's this Richard guy? I'm sure Larry's like, oh, he's just my brother. And Mike Lynch is like, why is he here? Richard just wanted to see the TV show in production. He was excited. His brother is famous. Someone's doing a TV show on his brother. He just literally wanted to see the process of a TV show being made. It was interesting. It was fun to him. That's it. But at the same time, there could have been an agenda of throwing the scent off of Larry and putting it onto someone who's totally innocent. Richard Haber has never been John Titor. But I believe all the Habers knew it was Maury Haber all along. We have Larry, who is a Haber brother. We have Richard, who's a Haber brother. We have Maury, who is a Haber brother. Maury is the computer expert of the entire family. He worked for EI Security when I found his existence in 2011. And in 2011, I searched and read every single one of Maury Haber's blog posts. And I guess they were technically articles on cybersecurity. That's it. He continually said IBM is stronger than Apple on this. Apple's not as secure as you think it is. Hackers can hack your Apple laptops. And so he had a theme of loving IBM, praising IBM, and kind of saying, Apple's not as strong as the media is leading you to believe. There are hackers that focus on hacking Apple users. And that's something John Titor seemed to be a fan of concerning the IBM, praising IBM. We know whoever John Titor was, Maury Haber, knew a secret about IBM, knew the secret of the Y2K 4-digit date archiving system, dates time system was 4 digits. So 1999 would have changed to 2000, whereas most computers would have only had 2 digits, 99 to 00, which is the Y2K problem. Maury Haber knew that an obscure IBM from the 70s, the IBM 5100, whatever the case, that had this 4-digit security feature built into it. He knew nerdy IBM stuff like that because he's a super IBM nerd. And that's where I really started comparing the texts between Maury Haber's EI security articles and John Titor's texts. There's a lot of text, a lot of articles, a lot of posts. I compared and compared and compared. I found 5-word phrases that matched exactly. A 5-word phrase here, a 4-word phrase there, a 3-word phrase there, 2-word phrase there. Very obscure 1-word usages that not too many people use in that context there. The texts between the two. I found a program created by a doctor, I believe works for a school. He invented it to find plagiarism among his students, to see if his students were cheating on their homework. And I used it to compare John Titor's text between Maury Haber's. It was definitive to an extreme degree. Maury Haber, his texts, his words, his language, his fingerprint. Everyone has a fingerprint. Everyone has a way of saying things. Everyone has a way of combining sentences, good grammar, bad grammar. In 2013, so 2 years later, I sat on this Maury Haber being John Titor thing for 2 years straight. I posted after researching for 2 years. I put up this research paper. Nobody sees the research paper. They only see the YouTube video. The YouTube video has 50,000 views at this point. It's called The Real John Titor Hoax Hunter. I have since changed the title to The Real John Titor Hoax Hunter 2013 Text Analysis. Arthur Haber. So we have Larry Haber. We've talked about his brother Richard Haber, also known as Rick Haber. I even called him John Rick Haber at one point. It's said on Wikipedia he's a computer scientist, but I would take that with a grain of salt. We know very little of Richard, and this question about Arthur Haber. So Arthur Haber is like the least known Haber brother. Arthur Haber, who is this guy? He literally appeared out of nowhere. So in 2011, when I found the identity of Maury Haber, I did also find the identity of Arthur Haber, and I ignored Arthur. So Arthur Haber sees my 2013 video, The Real John Titor, talking about his brother Maury. Arthur Haber voluntarily emails me. I kind of ignore the email, probably for a couple days, maybe a week. And then I respond, I'm like, okay, Arthur Haber says, I want to help you find John Titor. I'm curious too, I want to help you. I'm brothers with Maury and Larry and Richard. He's pretty open, and his openness causes me to be skeptical, because someone's so open, something a little fishy is going on. And this is what I did in my video, Smoking Gun Proof, John Titor's Maury Haber. I shared many of the Arthur Haber emails. That's how I came in contact with Arthur. Arthur had theories. He proposed to me that maybe it's his nephew, Brandon Haber. Brandon Haber is the son of Larry Haber. And I don't want to talk too much about Brandon, other than he was on one of the time travel forums, and the John Titor fans knew about his existence. He volunteered, hey, I'm Brandon Young, son of Larry Haber. And the story that I heard on Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell was Brandon Haber, who's particularly young, younger than me. Brandon was about 8, 9 years old during the fax to Art Bell. A 9-year-old, an 8-year-old isn't going to fax Art Bell at 1 a.m., especially the words that were sent to Art Bell. A 9-year-old's not going to be posting, I'm a time traveler from 2036, and taking photographs of a shotgun in a Corvette or a shotgun in a truck saying, yeah, here's my gear. But the cover story was Larry claimed his son Brandon said, hey, you should be lawyers to this anonymous time traveler. And a 9-year-old, or he gets older, let's say a teenager, a young teenager, is not going to say, oh, I found the phone number of this anonymous time traveler. Hey, Dad, do you want to represent him as an entertainment lawyer? No. The thing is, the whole story is entertainment. That should be a huge dead giveaway. But Arthur Haber, in the emails to me, tries to push Brandon, his nephew, because Brandon's already volunteered information on the time travel forums. Brandon's already volunteered, maybe I'm Titor. because he's trying to cover for who John Titor actually is, his uncle, Maury Haber. The Habers cover for each other. They all want people to think it's them, this person, this person, this person, that person. Most definitely, maybe it was a team effort, but the texts matched Maury and nobody else. The original poster was Maury, nobody else. Arthur tries to push this, and this. The only person Arthur didn't try to push was his brother Richard. He said, it's not Richard. Richard was just tagging along with his brother Larry during that TV show. It's an interesting story. It's a fabulous tale of excitement. Well, you really look at it. It's a guy just posting on a forum. I'm from 2036. Here's some photographs that I cropped as small as you can crop a photograph. It's like, if a time traveler is going to post a photo of his time machine, why is he going to crop it this small? Why is he going to crop the photo down that small? Because it's easier to hide what's going on. There are many red flags, many red flags. John Titor broke character once and said, "Only idiots don't believe what I'm saying, and they never will." Something to that effect in all caps over one of his posts. I'm like, wow, he was offended when people didn't believe in him. So John Titor, the fictional character created by Maury Haber. Maury Haber did get frustrated when people didn't believe in him. But I think Maury Haber abandoned the entire project in 2000, 2001, went about his life, is a cybersecurity expert, knew key details about IBM computers because he's an IBM nerd, very much dislikes Apple computers. John Titor mentioned Apple computers 0 times in all of his posts. You think a time traveler that could see the future would see iPhones. But no.
Larry Haber has since maintained an air of distance from the Titor story, acknowledging that he was at one point involved with individuals related to him, but due to client attorney privilege, he cannot divulge too many details. He repeats that despite this, he isn't sure if John Titor even exists. As of June 2021, the identity remains inconclusive, though nearly all signs point to one of the Habers, most likely Maury. The mystery of who John Titor was and why he spun such an elaborate narrative continues to titillate onlookers. In recent years, a multimedia artist named Joseph Matheny has claimed he was a consultant for the Titor story following his similar project, Ong's Hat, though aside from his own assertions, this has been difficult to corroborate. The John Titor identity has since been adapted for a Japanese cartoon called Steins Gate, where a main character takes on the pseudonym for time travel shenanigans of their own, demonstrating its ongoing influence even in present day. It seems the ungraspable nature of time travel is what continues to attract new audiences to the John Titor tale. So long as any deviations from his predictions can be chalked up to changes in our own timeline, it seems the suspension of disbelief that makes the story real in the minds of onlookers will continue unchallenged, at least until 2036.